Hello, I am Nathan D. Myers, and I am your instructor for this module. This module is called Character Development through Archetypes. We are going to talk about archetypes in the next few weeks. However, I am also going to introduce you to several other character development tools. So if you have been in my archetypes class in a live class or you've taken my online module, then just stick around. Don't worry. I am going to make sure that this experience is an enriching one for those of you who have also studied archetypes with me already. However, if you've never studied archetypes with me, then this will be a very rich study, and I think you will have a blast getting to know this information. I have never heard anyone else in the universe teach this information in a theater environment or a TV film class or anything of the sort. I just came up with this, and I decided this was a useful tool for me, and because I loved it so much, I wanted to share it with you. So thank you for being here, and sit back and enjoy the ride. When you received this module, you should have also received an email with several documents attached. One of those is the 12 Jungian Archetypes. It's a rather long document that goes into great detail about the 12, which I'll explain a little bit more about each of those in a moment. I want you to review that document before or after this class. It depends on you. It makes little difference to me. I will give you a little bit of that information in this module, but I'm not going to go into all of it. I will correlate the 12 types to several characters in TV and movies. But something that the packet does that I won't do in this video is it also explains how major corporations use these archetypes to help brand themselves, and that's kind of fascinating. And you can also find more information about that online. So make sure to read the 12 Jungian Archetypes packet. In the back of that packet, there is also a couple of casting notices. I want you to look at those casting notices and ask yourself, what character would I submit for? Because that is something we do all the time as actors. We get these casting breakdowns and we look at all the characters they're casting for a particular project and we say, oh, okay. And in my case, I go, black guy, white girl, Latina. Oh, here's a white guy. Oh, here's a white guy in my age demographic. Here's a white guy I could play. Oh, and the type, oh, they want a big tough guy meathead. Well, that's really not my type. So, oh, but here's a college professor I can play. or here's a quirky dad I can play. And knowing your type helps you figure out what you're going to submit for. So look in that packet as well for that information and just ask yourself, which one would I submit for? The other document that is in there is about the 5 types. I'm going to talk about that when we get to homework, and that will be another helpful tool for you as well. This is a monologues class, so I want you to get cozy at home, prepared to do a lot of solo work on camera. So make sure at home you have a DSLR, a cell phone, or a GoPro or something with which you shoot your videos, and make sure that it is comfortably positioned away from you so that you can create this nice medium close-up situation for yourself. I encourage you to position your camera just a little bit higher than your eye line so it's kind of looking down on you a little bit. That'll give you a better view. A lot of tapes that I see from people, the camera which should be up here is actually down low looking up at them, and that tends to show lots of wrinkles in the neck, and it's not a flattering position. So when you set up your camera, then put it up just a little bit higher than your head or your eye line and let it look down upon you. And be creative with this. If you're working from home and you don't have the nice DSLR with the tripod or whatever camera situation you're using, invest in one of those cheap Amazon tripods that you can put your cell phone on. You can clip it right onto your cell phone. Some of those even come equipped with a ring light or vice versa. And so be creative at home. I just did a session with somebody and we were Zooming together back and forth, and and she had a stack of encyclopedias and books from her library set up as tall as a tripod, and had her iPad sitting on top of that. I mean, there was duct tape involved, there were floor lamps and all kinds of stuff involved to try to light her situation, and she figured it out. And so be creative, be clever with how you put your home recording situation together. In this series, we are going to talk about archetypes and subtypes. We're going to talk about metatypes, which are archetypes. I'll get into that in a moment. We're going to talk about what type are you personally and how do you market yourself as that type. We're also going to talk about Laban and Laban efforts, which we'll talk about next week. We're going to talk about vocalization and dialect in regard to character development. And I'm going to give you several homework assignments each week, and I want you to do those homework assignments and send that stuff back to me for feedback. A lot of it you're going to be on your own, so be creative, read the instructions, and if you have any questions, email me. For those of you who have already done archetypes with me and you think you're pretty savvy and you don't need to do this module or this section of the module, then please just skip ahead to this time code below and you can pick up the back end of this. There is some very unique homework that is different than anything you've done in the Archetypes class with me if you did it live. One of the best reasons to use this Archetypes tool is to help you analyze a script very quickly. Those of you who have studied with me or taken some of our classes will have been introduced to Uta Hagen's 9 questions and Stanislavski and a lot of that foundational material. If you're familiar with that, then you know already that when you get handed a script, you have a unique opportunity to figuratively look into that script and say, "Hi, nice to meet you. I get to play you. Tell me about yourself." And you start asking questions about that, the character and their background and the circumstance, so that you can contextualize what you will do, how you will interpret that. Uta's questions are useful, and we put that into play almost without thinking sometimes. But another tool that is also very useful is this Archetypes tool. It's one I encourage you to use, especially in cold reads and auditions where someone hands you something and you look at it and you go, "Boy, I have no idea how to read this." And you'll hear casting directors say often, "We really liked your audition because you made a bold choice, or you made a clever or creative choice, or you made a risky choice." They are talking about definitive decisions that the actor made in that moment to play the character in a particular way. If you don't have Uta's questions and you don't make significant decisions about who do I think this person is and how will I read them, it's impossible to make a bold choice. So archetypes and knowing the archetype of the character that you're going to play, or just simply superimposing an archetype on top of it, whether you know who they are or not, is a very useful way to make a bold, risky choice in an audition. And as we get to know these types, you're going to understand how that overlay process can happen just like that. In TV and film, there are archetypes across the gamut. We don't just see the 12 that we're going to talk about in this class module. We see hundreds upon hundreds of various subtypes. Typically, those subtypes are not the archetypes, which we're going to talk about, though we can draw the line back to one of those. What we typically see are sub-occupational types like doctor, lawyer, butcher, baker, candlestick maker, and in my favorite pulpy movie genre, we see things like nerd, mean girl, jock, art kid, mathlete. And so we're very familiar with these subtypes, and it pays to understand what kind of subtype you might get cast as so that you know what to submit for. You also know how to get your headshots done accurately, because if you walk in all dolled up for headshots, but that really isn't the type that you're going to book most of the time, then you probably ought to reconsider that look. And so maybe that dolled up look ought to be kind of grunged down into something more earthy and grounded. And so knowing your type, understanding what subtypes you might play will help you with your headshots. It'll help you with what character types am I going to put on a demo reel for my clips on Actors Access and casting networks. And beyond that, it just helps you understand the characters you play even better, because you know who you are. You know what your essence is. And from that essence, you can bring forward all kinds of things into those characters that you do book. So in TV and movies, we see, like I said, butcher, baker, candlestick maker, but typically it's as doctor, lawyer, and teacher, something like that. So, but the essence of the person really does matter. Take Robin Williams. He's a great example of somebody who we understand his type. On the 12 Jungian archetypes, Robin Williams is probably the jester or the trickster, which we'll talk about more later. But he also played a doctor in the movie Patch Adams, and he turned that into absolute gold. He wouldn't typically be someone we might associate with being a medical doctor, but he was perfect as his jester essence, as Patch Adams, playing this particular doctor. And so you will see as we get into this conversation that these meta archetypes are global types, and they are not necessarily good nor evil, and they are not necessarily limited to sub-occupations, because you're going to see that we could have a doctor who is any one of the 12 archetypes. We could have a lawyer who's any one of the 12. We could have a nerd who's any one of the 12, and so on and so forth. And I want you to understand this concept. Understanding that these types are neither good nor evil is also very important, because one of our archetypes is the rebel. And we typically see people kind of kick back as the rebel. And we often associate rebels as with bad guys. And so we think that maybe they're evil. But they're not necessarily evil. There are a lot of very good characters in TV and movies who are, by essence and by archetype, the rebel, but they're the good guy. And so think about Star-Lord in the Guardians of the Galaxy movies. He's a total rebel, but he's the good guy, right? And so don't get caught up in the duality of good versus evil. This is a very big filter, and it's a meta filter that helps you understand characters a lot better. So one of the best reasons to absorb this information and put it into play is because it will help you understand your own type better. And knowing what to submit for and how to dress when you walk into a casting, how to dress when you do your self-tape is extremely important. Your type matters in as much as there are certain roles you will book more easily than others. There are certain types you will book more easily than others. I don't typically book something like Cop 1 and Meathead Tough Guy, because that's not my essence archetype. When people look at me personally, they say things like quirky dad, college professor, beach bum. And so I have a particular type that I need to submit for, generally speaking. This is not to say that you cannot be an incredible character actor and move well beyond your essence and your look in order to fit into the mold of other characters, because you can certainly do that. There are people like Gary Oldman and Daniel Day-Lewis and other character actors who are really incredible chameleon morphs, and they just kind of take on the essence archetype of whatever they're presented with. And I love watching those guys work. They are some of my favorite people to watch in Hollywood. They're extremely talented. And if you see them in their own essence sometimes, Daniel Day-Lewis is a really great example of this. He's such a softie and such a seemingly nice, demure, even shy person, but he's played some incredible, extroverted, powerful characters like the Butcher in the Gangs of New York. And it's remarkable what he does. Now, he didn't get to that point by booking The Butcher of New York over and over and over again. I have no doubt he booked types that were very similar to his essence when he was first working. All actors do this. And so if you are naturally bent towards tough guy roles, well, market yourself that way. But if you are like me and you're bent a little bit more towards maybe something a little more cliche, mainstream, quirky dad, guy next door kind of stuff, well, market yourself that way. It does matter, and you will book that stuff first. That is the point of this little tirade. You're going to book that stuff first. If you are androgynous, you're going to book something androgynous first. If you're really girly girl, and you're going to book that first. If you're a tough guy and a muscle meathead, that's what you're going to book first. And so make sure that you don't hamstring yourself, put an obstacle in front of yourself by attempting to market yourself in this industry as a type that you are not yet. Because once you do some character work, you earn your stripes out there and people learn to respect you as an actor, they may begin to give you a little more room to play and invite you into more character work and give you those dream roles that maybe you're dreaming of, because many of you are, whether you can put words on it or not, you're dreaming of playing against your type. You got into this industry because you thought, well, I'm bored with me. I don't want to play me. I want to play something very different than me. And so you seek out these kind of extremely different characters from yourself, and you go looking for that kind of stuff. And if you want to start out and market yourself as your opposite, completely against your type, you can do that. There are a lot of pop stars who get away with that, and they market a persona, and that's all they're doing most of the time. And but I don't recommend it for the actor who really wants to create a lot of range and build a career that's gonna hold water in the long term. You want to be able to kind of build for the future and make sure you've built a solid foundation. One, so you have the educational foundation, but you also have the respect of your fellow man, respect of casting directors, and respect of directors and other people who make media, so that they don't think you're just a flavor of the week novelty. They think you're a serious actor. And I think you would agree, you and I both want to be perceived that way. Carl Jung used the concept of the character archetype in his theory of the collective unconscious. To him, universal mythic characters have been used in human storytelling dating back to the beginnings of spoken language. According to Jung, they represent characters throughout history that resonate with all of us in all cultures and time frames. He also felt these universal characteristics offered ways of describing people's current-day personalities. As the universal nature of these characters were thought to resonate with people from all cultures, movie studios back in the 1980s made big heroic spectacles or animated epics featuring the archetypes viewers would relate to and recognize. Jung broke his major 12 personality types into 3 subsets: ego, soul, and self. People don't always fit into one archetype. Sometimes they can be considered a combination, like Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz. She comes across as the innocent, but in the context of the film, she is also the explorer. Without getting too complex about it, for the purpose of writing fiction, many writers have created stories about the following archetypes. I'd like to introduce you to the 12 archetypes on the Jungian wheel. The first type is known as the everyman or the regular guy. If you're familiar with actor neutral, then I would like for you to go ahead and stand up and make yourself comfortable somewhere in your room. I would like for you to find actor neutral. Actor neutral is your feet hips width apart, your arms are at your side, your shoulders are comfortably rolled back, and your gaze is set forward. This actor neutral position, which is commonly used for monologue delivery, the singing of songs in musical theater, and so on and so forth, is also, by my estimation, the everyman. The everyman has a very grounded, stable, normal affect. And the everyman will, most of the time, just stand there. And so I like to use actor neutral as my everyman. But your everyman might physicalize a little bit differently. Maybe your everyman cocks a hip. Maybe your everyman cocks their head. I would like for you to physicalize your everyman or every woman. And the regular guy or the regular gal is another way that you can refer to the everyman. So how did you physicalize your everyman? Now, remember, character development is not only about the physicalization of the character, but I think you're going to discover as you go through these that each of these, as Jung says, is universally understood. And I'm going to give you a moment before I introduce each one, and I'll demonstrate each one of these to you a little bit as well physically. But I'm not going to do that until I give you a few beats to do that on your own. I want you to make a quick, intuitive judgment call about each one of these and physicalize them in the space, right there at home or wherever you're watching this video. I want you to physicalize the energy of each of these archetypes. The everyman is actor neutral. That's a place to start. And from that position, I want you to just morph into the physical manifestation of each of these. And you're going to find that most of these, you just know them. And you'll be like, I don't even understand why I know these. But it's because they're programmed in. You know them very well. But I'll give you a few beats after I introduce each one. And I'll describe it a little bit, and I want you to start playing in that energy and physicalize this character. On screen, I will cut to myself demonstrating these for you too a little bit, but not until you've had a moment to have some sort of visceral, intuitive reaction. Number 2, the innocent. How would you posture yourself as the innocent? Do it now. Many people in live classes, when I do this with people, they bring their shoulders forward. Many of them hold their area, which is what my choir teacher used to say when you put your hands in your crotch. And they'll hold their area. They'll bring their shoulders forward. Many of them bring their gaze downward whenever they do the innocent. Was that your reaction? Some people do the innocent by opening up to the world instead of closing off. And I find that a very interesting reaction. They open up, their eyes widen, they become like this childlike, open, naive, doe-eyed character. Where is your innocent manifesting that energy? And I want you to take special note, where do you feel this energy in your body? Because each one of these will generate from a particular location in the body. Okay. Number 3, the hero. Manifest, physicalize the hero. Do it now. I have a feeling many of you did what most of my live class students do when they hear this. Most of them put their hands on their hips. They gaze off just like Superman. They bring their chest out, because the hero, if you'll be honest about where you feel this, even though the hero is very grounded down here, it's a very powerful position in the body, the hero is all heart. Where do you feel the hero in your body? Does it make you want to fly away? What are you going to do? The hero is an archetype that we understand inherently. Not only do we automatically know how to physicalize it, but we see it all the time in TV and movies, especially in this generation, which is full of comic book movies. We see all sorts of superheroes, from TV shows like Green Arrow and Gotham and other DC Comics all the way to Marvel movies, and we see the hero all the time. We see female versions of the hero, we see male versions, we see villainous versions of the hero, we see the good guy as well. So you get this one. I know you know it. Number 4, the nurturer or the caregiver. How does your nurturer, caregiver, manifest physically in your body? Feel the nurturer, feel the caregiver. Do it now. Many people manifest the nurturer or the caregiver by holding a baby. I see this all the time. People immediately grab a baby and they look down, and a lot of people reach for their belly even. There's this interesting visceral, gut-oriented thing about the nurturer. They feel their need to nurture and to care for others right here in the gut. It is somewhere between the heart and the gut, and it's combined. I have a midwife friend who delivered our first child, and she cracks me up. And the first time I heard her say this, it blew my mind. But she said one day, she was like, because she gets so excited about babies and helping people give birth, and she said, "Oh, there's going to be another yummy baby." And I busted out laughing, and I thought, that's hilarious, but how could a baby be yummy except that there's something very visceral about the nurturer and the caregiver, somewhere between the heart and the belly. And it's very grounded, it's right here, it's down home, it's salt of the earth. And so how does your nurturer, caregiver manifest that energy in the body? Is it between the heart and the belly? I venture to say it probably is, but I want you to determine where is that energy and how would you play the nurturer or the caregiver. Number 5, the creator. When I say the creator, oftentimes people start to think about God complex oriented characters, which we can go there. There are several God complex characters out there in the universe. Val Kilmer played Jim Morrison in the movie about the Doors, and Jim Morrison is not only an artist as a creator, but he also had a serious God complex. So we do see that a lot in TV and movies. But when we look at the artist as a type, I'm really talking about creatives, makers, and people who are true artists. They could be pop stars, they could be painters, but they are in their essence artists. So how does your artist manifest that physical energy in their body? Where is it? Do it now. A lot of people in live classes will begin to look for this energy. They seem to not know where it is in the body specifically, and they start to look outside themselves, which I think is right. So if you reached up and you started floating around in the cosmos, you are probably right. I think that the creator or the artist is in the field. They're out here somewhere in the cosmos. People reach up, they paint pictures, they float around, they do all sorts of strange things looking for the energy of the artist. Some of them grab their palette and they dip their paints and they start to do this. Some of them sing, but there is something very kind of ambiguous about the energy of the creative or the artist. How does your artist, creator, manifest in your body? Where do you feel it? Number 6, the explorer. I really love this one. How does the explorer manifest for you? Do it now. I often see people immediately lean forward. It's the thing that I notice the most. They always lean forward. Many of them reach up and they immediately start searching the horizon. And I love this because it's so consistent across people. Many of them open up telescopes and look to the skies, and this is the energy of the explorer. It's first and foremost very forward, and then it's searching. And so to me, where this is in the body is, yes, in the feet, right? It's grounded because this person's about to take off looking for something, but it's also in the eyes. It's also very much visual and about reaching forward, not only with the feet, but also with the eyes. Where does your explorer manifest in your body? Number 7, the rebel. Where does the rebel manifest in your body? Physicalize it. Do it now. I always see people cross their arms and they begin to do the everyman. They do a version of the everyman. However, they'll sit back, they'll relax, they cock their chin, they stick their nose up in the air. Something very arrogant and cocky about the rebel. Where do you feel that in your body? I feel that from my hips to the ground. It's a very grounded, heavy position when I do the rebel. Where do you feel it? Number 8, the lover. This one stumps a lot of people. It stumps me a little bit too. And if you struggle with this, then I encourage you to put this one in your back pocket and come back to it from time to time and practice it. Some people are the lover and they just get this. And this is their modus operandi, but this may not be, it's not mine and it may not be yours. But where do you feel the lover in your body? Where does that manifest? It's not necessarily sexual, though it can be. And sometimes on these Jungian wheels, you're going to see references to the seductress. Sometimes they're considered interchangeable, the lover or the seductress. I don't think that the lover has to be sexualized, and so it's not necessarily there, but it could be very rooted that way. It could be very low in your body. However, if you feel it somewhere else in your body, it's probably going to be up here in the heart. But I want you to do it, so do it now. Maybe it has to do with dance. Maybe it has to do with seduction. Maybe it has to do with the sensual nature of the lover. I'm not sure, but it is a unique archetype and one that we see all the time in TV and movies. Where does the lover manifest for you in your body? Number 9, the magician. I love this one. The magician, where does it manifest for you in your body? Do it now. How would a magician hold themselves? I see people all the time immediately expand up here in the shoulders. They'll bring their arms up. They start doing card tricks. They do there's some sort of power center right here for the magician, and they start to spread out. They get very almost grounded, but like they're hovering above the ground, like a wizard or something like this. And so they begin to move up away from the earth because there is something mystical, supernatural about the magician. Now, when we see magicians in TV and movies, sometimes we see actual magicians or we see actual wizards in a movie like Gandalf or Dumbledore, but and they are by trade a magician. I don't want you to get tricked by that. They are a magician, but could Gandalf also be a sage, or could Gandalf also be a lover? Maybe. All these characters have a recipe, and so but the magicians by trade are not necessarily also magicians in their archetype. They are sub-occupational magicians, but they may be a rebel or a hero in their actual essence. So don't get confused by that. When we see true magicians in their archetype in TV and movies, it's typically someone like the hacker in the Ocean's 11 movie. He can do impossible things, and it's one reason the Ocean needs him on the team, is because this guy can do stuff nobody else can do. And in a story, that's usually the magician character, is this person with a unique ability, a unique superpower of some nature, who is able to do impossible things. So think about who that might be for you, but also think about how does that physicalize in my body personally. I think of Doctor Strange, and I immediately think of these posters where we see Doctor Strange with his hands out and these big, discs of magic right on the ends of his hands. So think about how that works for you. It doesn't have to be magic as such. It has to do with a character who is mysterious, powerful, and capable of doing just about anything and pulling rabbits out of hats. So, number 10, the ruler. Think about how the ruler holds themselves. Where do they physicalize the energy? Kings, queens, authority figures. Where do you feel it? Do it now. When I see people manifest the ruler, they often stand up nice and straight. They'll be hanging out in a circle all hunched over, and I'll say, do the ruler, and they go, whoosh, and they immediately straighten up. There's something very strong and postured about the ruler, and most of them lift a scepter. I see this all the time. And they immediately lift this symbol of authority, and they'll hold it up. Some of them put on their own crown, and they feel very postured. It's very strong, but that energy, if you'll be honest, comes up through the body, and it's up here somewhere. It's up here because the ruler is a thinker. The ruler is about wisdom and understanding and knowledge, and it's right here. I also recommend to people, this is a side note, that when you do your self-tapes or live auditions, sometimes the everyman or actor neutral is not very useful. But if you will do the ruler when you step up to do your live audition, or you get in front of a camera to do your self-tape, and you're feeling all awkward, like, I don't know what to do with my body, and I don't know how to stand, and what's my frame, and what's my eye line, and you're going through that, do the ruler. Plant your feet on the floor, just lock them to the floor, and do the ruler, lift that scepter, find your eye line, and that will give you this sense of confidence about being in that space and the stillness that's useful for good camera work, particularly for self-tapes and live auditions on camera. How does your ruler manifest physically in your body? Number 11, the jester, also known as the trickster. How does the jester manifest in your body? Physicalize it somehow. Do it now. I see people immediately, their eyes widen, they get almost a little crazy, and their hands come up and they start dabbling around in the energy. It's very similar to the artist or the creative, but there's something kind of frenetic, dangerous, and unpredictable about the jester. He's mischievous, and that mischievous energy it's Loki, right, from the Avengers lore, but is Loki a true jester? He is traditionally, because he's a god of mischief, right? But is our Loki in the Marvel movies an actual jester? He's not very funny. He's more the ruler, isn't he? He's an authority figure. He's a rebel. He's always breaking the rules. But by nature, he is alleged to be this god of mischief. So there's something very mischievous about the jester. And we associate jesters with comedy, unpredictable, silliness, class clowns, and a lot of class clowns in TV and movies. That chumpy best friend, there are a lot of jesters. Robin Williams is probably by nature a jester in his essence, as are a lot of other just goofball type actors who are part of pulpy TV and movies. It's very frenetic, it's very unpredictable. Sometimes they're funny, sometimes they're good, sometimes they're evil, but they're a jester. Where does that manifest for you in your body? Where do you feel it? To me, it's not grounded at all. It's up here somewhere. It's unpredictable. It's very light on its feet. Where do you feel? All right, last but not least, the sage, number 12. The sage. This one's tricky. A lot of people ask me what sage means. They're like, sage, isn't that a spice? And I'm like, well, yes, it is a spice, but to be sagey is to be ultimately very wise and worldly wise. You're a sage. You're spiritually wise. You're a sage. So the sage is typically the oracle or this source of knowledge within a story. In the hero's journey, the sage is that person who rises up, and it's Yoda to Luke Skywalker. It's Dumbledore to Harry Potter. The sage is that person who comes to bring light and to bring wisdom, and that sage is often an enlightened one. Where do you feel it in your body? And then I'll give you some suggestions. Most people struggle with this. They look from their toes all the way up their body going, where is this? And they can't find it. And occasionally people will bring their hands to their heart center in prayer position, and I'll go, okay, well that could be. Maybe your sage is very centered in prayer. That's a possibility. My theory about this is that because we have 12 gateways on the body, that the sage is up here at the halo. And that is really where this energy is, because they're just getting downloads from on high all the time. And so when I do the sage, I typically posture myself. I begin to levitate, float, and I feel that energy way up here whenever I play the sage. So where did you feel it, though? And note it, because it's a very useful position for various character types you might play. Okay, so you have now been introduced to the 12 Jungian archetypes. You have physicalized those, and now it's time for your homework. As part of this module, you're going to be asked to do several on-camera exercises, which is why I discussed setting that up at the top of this video. I want you to take some time this week to put together a camera exercise, which I'll give you in a moment. First, though, I would like for you to read the packet that I sent you. Also included with that packet is another form that talks about 5 archetypes I can easily play are, and I would like you to write them down. And then write down a few, whatever's left over for you, that you maybe you relate to somewhat, but you don't feel them 100%. Write those down. And then I want you to write down the ones that you absolutely just can't figure out, the ones you don't feel in your body, you're not sure how to manifest that, you don't relate to it, you don't feel it. Write that down and share that information with me. Another thing that I would like for you to do is potentially take your headshot and demo reel and post it in a Facebook group online. You can do that in our private group, or you can do it in other social media circles. But again, be careful, grow a thick skin if you're going to do that, and ask people to subtype you. I have 3 links that I want to give you because another homework assignment for you this month is to take 3 different online tests. One of the tests does cost money, so if you don't want to spend anything extra, I understand. That is the Enneagram test at Enneagram Institute, and I'll put these links right on the screen. So the Enneagram is an ancient personality typing test from the Greeks. There are 9 types, and in those 9 types, you typically read one of those character types and you go, oh, this is very much me. And understanding that type can help you understand yourself better. Understanding yourself helps you understand the characters that you play. So go to Enneagram Institute. I think it's $15 to take that test at the time of this recording. And go check that out. It's easy. It'll take you just a few minutes to take the test. You'll understand your Enneagram type, and you can bring that back to this class material, and it will make a huge difference. Another thing you can do is take the Myers-Briggs personality assessment. This is a standard personality assessment that's given in colleges and universities, and corporate trainers often do this for people when they come on board in the new company, and they do that to help type that person so that they know how they will really gel with the group dynamics of the whole. In the Myers-Briggs, we have 4 different quadrants that you get to deal with. Characters are introverted or extroverted. They are intuitive or sensing. They are feeling or thinking. And then they are judging or perceiving. And so this is a really fun tool to help you understand yourself and how you engage with other people. If you've never taken that before, then go take it. If you have taken it before and you know your Myers-Briggs personality assessment score, then bring that to this module. It's going to help you. You can take the Myers-Briggs personality assessment at 16personalities.com, I believe. It's going to be right here on the screen. And that is a free test that you can take online. It takes about 10 minutes to take that test. And I highly encourage you to do that and bring that information back to this class. A third test, and perhaps the most useful for this module, is at individualogist.com. That's a mouthful. It's going to be on the screen. And that is a brief test that you can take for free to help you understand which of the 12 Jungian archetypes you likely relate to the most. If you can't do all of that this week, but you can do one of them, and then you can do the other 2 later this month, that's fine. But begin to pick away at that, because that self-knowledge is going to be very useful. Another thing I would like for you to do is begin thinking about monologues and what character type monologues would you want to read. You may already have a list of characters you love in TV and movies, and you may have several roles you wish you could play because you look at it and go, oh man, I can totally nail that. I wish they had cast me instead of so-and-so because I could have done that just as well or better than they did. And you may already have that. If you do, maybe you already have some monologues that you've tucked away or you are transcribing from movies. If you can't find them online, that's the best way to do it, is just take your favorite movie monologues and hit pause, type out the dialogue, hit play, get a little bit more, pause, type out the dialogue. That's the way we always did it back in the day. So consider doing that from favorite TV and movies. You may also write a monologue if you so choose, something that would suit you and your essence very well. Those of you that do write a lot, you may want to execute that option. Another option that you can employ is to begin to cannibalize or plagiarize a monologue from somewhere in the universe that suits you very well. It's not going to be plagiarism in this situation, in truth, because you're not being graded on this, and you are also not selling this to anyone. So if you want to borrow some really well-written language from another monologue somewhere out there and borrow that, put it on paper, rearrange the furniture, add something to it, take a few things away, and customize it for yourself, that is also a nice way to begin to write a monologue. Make your monologue somewhere between 1 minute and 2 minutes long. Occasionally, I'll see requests in castings for monologues that are 2 to 4 minutes. So you might want to write or come up with a longer monologue than just 1.5 minutes. And if you have trouble finding something and you're like, I can't find anything online, and you feel like you can't write it and you don't want to cannibalize, then email me, and as a lifeline, I will offer you a couple of monologue suggestions that I will send your way. The last thing that I want you guys to do is your first self-taped exercise. And this is a solo exercise. It's called Sybil in the improv world, but it is a character game. Typically, you would perform this in front of an audience or a class. But what I want you to do is take the Jungian archetype wheel. I want you to use it as the backdrop to come up with 3 characters. And I want you to do 3 short monologues on camera where you move from one character to the next without stopping. And you morph from one person and you monologue as that person for a moment, you morph into someone else, you monologue as that person, and then you morph yet one more time and become someone yet again. And you can gender shift if you want to, you can age shift if you want to, you can do dialects, voices, I don't care what you do, but I want you to practice making that transition and morphing from one character to the next. That dialogue or monologue can be internalized. It can be a conversation that this person is having with themselves. It could be public speaking. It could be a preacher talking to a congregation or a politician talking to constituents. And it could be a one-on-one circle two conversation with a second party. However you want to do that, but come up with those characters. Think about what those characters would say. You may costume, hair, makeup this if you'd like to, just for fun. Shoot it in a well-lit area and share that with me, and that's your primary first exercise. The goal is to practice a little bit of what I've just given you, which is to put the physicalization of these archetypes that you pick into play. Don't miss that. Make sure that that is the primary reason that you do this, is to practice that physicalization and manifestation of one of those archetypal energies. Put it into action, and then develop around that. And if you want to wear a hat and glue on a mustache, I don't care. Have some fun with it, and I look forward to seeing all of that homework come back. Read your documentation, and I will include with this video a step-by-step breakdown of what your homework is, and I'll describe it on paper again. If you're not auditory and you're like, man, I really need to get my homework on paper, I will send it to you that way as well. Thanks for listening, and I hope this has been helpful, an introduction to archetypes for character development. If you're struggling with this on your own, then you're always welcome to reach out to an instructor. But I highly recommend that you use Facebook and social media to potentially post your information out there so people can look you over. If you will ask the Facebook community and several different online groups, what type am I? And you post your headshot, you post your demo reel, you'll get a lot more information than you want, actually. You'll get a lot of feedback. I want to encourage you to take your headshot and your demo reel, if you have one, or maybe a clip from class or something you've shot on your own, and post it in our private Facebook group, where you're going to meet quite a few actors in there who will give you some feedback. They've done this with me, most of them in a live class, some of them online, and so they will understand what you're doing, and they will be gracious to give you some feedback. So I highly encourage you to do that. And I will play host to that when I see it happening. I'll get involved in the conversation and try to shake the tree of that private group to make sure people will give you some of that feedback that you need. What you're going to get from them is all of the archetype perception that they have for you. They're going to look at you and go, I think that you might be this archetype on the wheel. And then some people are going to look at you and go, doctor, lawyer, nerd, mean girl, so on and so forth. And they will give you sub-occupational characters they would believe you playing. And that's very helpful information. So in class, live, I call that the hot seat. And we typically put people in a seat in front of the class and let everyone write down types. When you do this online, you can have the same experience, but I find you can get even better feedback online because you've got a lot more people at your disposal. In a live class, we have 10 or 12 people. Online, you have maybe hundreds or thousands of people that might give you feedback. So a note on feedback, if you are going to do that, I would highly advise you to do what is absolutely necessary in this industry, and that is grow a thick skin, because this industry is racist, genderist, ageist. It is very aware of how tall you are, how fat you are, how skinny you are, how muscular you are, or not. And so when people look at you and they start to type you, I want you to be very prepared to kind of harden your heart and take whatever you get and be honest about it, because this is their honest opinion of you, and they're probably right. And those hot seat results that you will get from people in social media will be Sometimes they sting a little bit. Sometimes it can hurt your feelings even. So I want you to be prepared for that. And then I also want you to be prepared for the aha that may come through that, because some of the feedback you get may cause you to go, oh, I had no idea that people perceived me that way. I had no idea that I look like this particular actor, because if you'll ask and say, who do I remind you of, you'll get that kind of feedback too. But if you love this, having a second point of reference, which is the opposite, which is someone very different than you, gives you two incredible points of reference whereby you can draw a triangle, because you've got an opposite, you get handed a script, and you have the opportunity to say, okay, nice to meet you, who are you, tell me about yourself. Are you me? Are you my opposite? Or are you someone else? And understanding you and your opposite, how they correlate to the Archetypes wheel, and how this new character you're presented with kind of correlates to the other two, or contrasts the other two, allows you to create this triangle, and some real geometry starts happening, and those points of reference can help you develop a character very quickly. So if you like this, come take the Shapeshifter module with me at another time and learn about your opposite as well.